In the dim glow of the barn, shadows danced along the walls, creating an ethereal ambience that often made Sarah feel as though she were in another world. She stood there, her heart heavy yet strangely electrified, the scent of fresh hay invoking memories that tugged at her very soul. What is this emptiness? She mused, her thoughts racing. Why does it feel like the walls themselves are closing in? As she brushed her fingers along Jake's sleek, mahogany coat, her beloved horse, an involuntary shiver ran down her spine. Jake nickered softly, his dark eyes filled with an intelligence that always seemed to understand the tangled emotions swirling within her. He was her sanctuary in a world that felt increasingly chaotic, especially since Tom had been away for 2 long weeks. Tom had always been the one to light up her life, his laughter resonating like a favorite song. Now, that melody was replaced by a haunting silence that echoed through every corner of their home. The absence of his warm presence loomed like a shadow, uninvited and persistent. As she glanced at the empty space where he usually stood, her heart ached with longing, the gulf between them widening with each passing day. "Jake," she whispered, the sound barely breaking the silence of the barn. "Can you feel it too?" In response, Jake nudged her gently, as if to convey that she wasn't truly alone. In his eyes, she saw a flicker of understanding, an unspoken promise that they would face whatever lay ahead together. Yet even with Jake by her side, there were moments when the solitude felt suffocating, like a thick fog that refused to lift. She would pour herself into her work at the farm, trying to distract herself, but her thoughts often drifted to Tom. He had gone away for a project, a temporary job that felt anything but temporary now. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she felt the weight of his absence settle around her like a shroud. That was the problem with love, wasn't it? It left you vulnerable, exposed, hanging in the balance of someone else's choices. As she mounted Jake for a ride, she could feel the palpable tension in her chest. Where once there was excitement, there now lurked a pervasive unease. The sun blazed overhead as they set off along the familiar trail. The rhythmic sound of Jake's hoofs on the dirt, combined with the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, created a soothing melody. But no matter how soothing, it couldn't drown out the whispers in her mind. Would Tom come back the same? Would their connection still be intact? Or had the very essence of their relationship begun to fray at the edges? Each ride had become a ritual, a temporary escape from the haunting halls of her thoughts. But as much as Jake filled the void, he couldn't replace Tom. They galloped through the woods, the cacophony of nature surrounding them, yet Sarah felt like a ghost, lingering in a world that moved on without her. Reaching a clearing that overlooked a sprawling meadow, Sarah pulled Jake to a halt and dismounted. She sank to the ground, leaning against his warm side, willing the tumult in her heart to quiet down. "What is wrong with me?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Am I becoming someone I don't recognize?" Jake snorted softly, brushing against her with his nose. In that moment, she felt acutely aware of his presence. He was more than just a horse, he was a confidant, a piece of her soul that kept her anchored. "You understand, don't you?" she continued, resting her head against his shoulder. Even in her darkest moments, the warmth radiating from him was a gentle reminder that she was not entirely lost. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues across the sky, Sarah found herself lost in thought. "I wish I could just tell Tom that it's not just about him being away. It's about how life feels different now." But how could she express something so profound? How could she explain that her heart felt like it was splintering into fragments, each piece yearning for a different connection? With every ride, she could feel Jake absorbing her emotions, responding to her highs and lows, and somehow understanding her. The bond they shared grew deeper, enriched by the secret whispers of her heart. But, like an impending storm, doubt loomed over her. Would Tom understand this bond? Would he feel threatened by it? Or would he see it as a testament to her strength? That night, as she returned to their home, the silence was deafening. The familiar creak of the floorboards under her feet echoed like a drumbeat, and the absence of Tom reverberated in her chest. She poured herself a glass of wine, the crimson liquid swirling like the chaotic thoughts in her mind. Each sip felt like a balm to her frayed nerves, yet didn't silence the feelings lingering beneath the surface. With a heavy heart, she glanced around the empty living room. The photographs of happier moments filled her vision, warm smiles, shared laughter, and cuddles with Jake. But each picture felt like a mocking reminder of what was missing. "Will you come back to me, Tom?" she whispered to the quiet room, her voice trembling. Just then, she heard a familiar sound, a soft nicker and the gentle rustling of hay as Jake paced outside. The connection between them felt stronger than ever. She hurried outside, pulling on her jacket against the evening chill. Under the gaze of the stars, she found solace in Jake's presence once more. "You're the only one who gets it. I don't even know how to tell him. How do I explain the bond we have?" she asked, her voice cracking. Jake responded with a gentle nudge, as if to reassure her that everything would be okay, that love often demanded sacrifices, but it also provided unexpected strength. They stood together, the moon casting a silvery glow on them. Sarah felt a rush of determination. She glimpsed the future and realized she didn't have to choose between Tom and Jake. Both were integral to her life, both completed her in different ways. "Tomorrow, I'll ride with him," she resolved, the fire in her heart flickering back to life. Maybe introducing Tom to Jake would bridge the gap, would build a foundation for understanding where their love could flourish. For now, though, she existed in the warmth of Jake's company, the silence no longer feeling quite so heavy. In that moment, Sarah chose to believe in resilience, love, and the possibility of connection. She closed her eyes, offering a silent prayer of hope to the stars above, and imagined a future filled with joy, laughter, and endless adventures, one where both Tom and Jake would always have a place by her side. A new beginning. The morning sun poured through the barn's open door, casting warm beams across the dusty floor. Sarah stood in the center, feeling a renewed sense of purpose wash over her. Today was the day she would introduce Tom to Jake in a way that would honor the bond she shared with her horse while embracing the love she had for her husband. As she prepared for the ride, anxiety bubbled within her like a pot set to boil. Approaching Jake, she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Today, we're going to show him what you mean to me," she said, giving Jake a reassuring pat on the neck. His muscles quivered at her touch, and he turned to her, his bright eyes filled with curiosity. It was more than a ride, it was a revelation. As she groomed him, each stroke of the brush felt like a promise. They would both step into the unknown today, and Sarah could feel the weight of expectation hanging in the air. She set up the tack, her hands trembling slightly. The flutter of excitement and apprehension left her breathless. When the moment finally arrived, Sarah stood by the front door, Jake beside her, shifting his weight as though caught between anticipation and impatience. Tom's truck rolled into the driveway, the crunch of gravel loud against the quiet of the morning. Sarah's heart raced. Would he understand? Would he welcome this part of her life? As Tom stepped out, a smile lit up his face. "Hey, there. Ready for today?" He seemed genuinely eager, a spark of spontaneity in his demeanor that made Sarah's heart swell. She hoped he would take to Jake as easily as she did. With a deep breath, she nodded, her voice steadying as she replied, "I thought it would be nice if we went for a ride together." The weight of her nerves lingered, but she wanted to exude confidence. They walked toward the barn together, and Sarah could see Tom's gaze wandering over the stable, taking in the scent of hay and the familiar sounds of the place she held. "Dear, okay, let's do this," she said, leading Jake out into the sunlight. "Meet Jake." Tom stepped closer, extending a tentative hand. Jake, sensing the newcomer's approach, moved forward, black mane swaying in the gentle breeze. "He's magnificent," Tom said, his fingers brushing against Jake's neck. It was a cautious connection, but Sarah saw a glimmer of acceptance in Tom's eyes. "Jake and I have been through so much together," she said, the words tumbling from her lips like an untamed river. "He's more than just a horse to me, he's my friend." Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I can see that." With each passing second, Sarah felt the tension in her shoulders ease. They worked together to saddle Jake, the easy rhythm of their movements reminding her of their early days together. Laughter erupted between them, breaking the ice. "Remember when we did this for the first time?" Tom chuckled, the memory washing over him. "You nearly fell off because you were so nervous." Just wait until I show you my skills today, Sarah replied playfully, trying to navigate her own nerves. As they mounted their horses, Tom on a gentle mare that had been borrowed from a friend. Sarah felt a rush of excitement. Let's ride. To the meadow, she suggested, a hint of mischief dancing in her voice. Tom grinned. The wind whipped through her hair as they started along the path, the rhythm of hoofbeats creating an exhilarating symphony. The world unfolded around them, vibrant and alive. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. With each stride, Sarah felt the fears of yesterday dissolve like the morning mist, but then, as they reached a more secluded part of the trail, she noticed something, a fluttering object just off the path. It was a plastic bag, crumpled and caught in a thicket, a reminder of the litter that sometimes marred this beautiful landscape. A little concerned, Sarah slowed Jake, turning her head to signal to Tom. Hang on a sec. As she dismounted to clear the bag, Jake remained calm, although she noted his ears swiveling back and forth, attentive to every sound. I'll just be a moment, she reassured him, quickly approaching the debris, just as she reached down to grab it, though, a sudden rustle echoed from behind the bushes. Her heart stopped. Was it a deer? A bear? A surge of instinct kicked in, sending adrenaline flooding through her veins. In a wild flash, Jake began to snort and stomp, sensing her sudden tension. Easy, boy, she called out, trying to calm him even as her own nerves electrified the air. The noise intensified, and Sarah's eyes widened. Then, out from the brush burst a small, abandoned puppy, its fur matted and eyes wide with fear. A small, relieved laugh escaped her lips. Oh, it's just a puppy. Tom dismounted, his interest piqued. Poor little thing, he said, crouching down toward it. The puppy's tail wagged uncertainly, unsure if it should run or stay. Can we keep it? Sarah implored, kneeling beside Tom. She stretched out her hand, allowing the puppy to sniff her fingers. We can't keep every stray we find, Tom replied gently, but the fondness in his voice betrayed that he was captivated. But we can get it some help. Just then, Jake shifted nervously again, as if sensing something else in the air. He let out a soft whinny, and Sarah felt a growing unease. Maybe we should keep moving, she suggested. Tom nodded, and they stood together, the puppy now settled in Sarah's arms, a bundle of fur and hope. Let's get out of this thicket and take a breather in the meadow, he said, his gaze warming as he watched her with the puppy. They continued on their trail, and Sarah felt awash in the duality of joy and tension. The puppy nestled against her chest, while Jake's powerful movements underneath her reminded her of the adventure still ahead. As they emerged into the sprawling meadow, a breathtaking canvas of wildflowers burst into view. Golden yellows and deep purples mingled together under the vast blue sky. Sarah felt her spirit lift as she looked around, every blossom whispering promises of renewal. Well, what do you think? Tom asked, glancing around in awe as they settled in. The puppy squirmed playfully, eager for attention. He's a little bundle of joy, isn't he? Sarah mused, her heart warming. The moment felt magical, sunlight bathed everything in a golden hue. As they both shared laughter and stories, Sarah felt a spark igniting within her, but then, her gaze met Jake's, and she sensed the moment passing. We should let them interact, don't you think? She suggested, looking between Tom and the puppy. Good idea, Tom replied, his eyes lighting up. He let the puppy down gently, and it bounced toward Jake, sniffing curiously at the horses' hooves. For a fleeting second, Sarah witnessed the essence of connect on a dance of trust and curiosity. But just as quickly, Jake's ears perked at an unexpected sound. He snorted again, eyes wide. In an instant, the blissful moment shattered. Tom stepped back, startled. What's wrong? Before Sarah could answer, Jake turned abruptly, tossing his head as he let out a startled whinny. The puppy yelped, sprinting away in a panic at the sudden movement. No, wait. Sarah called, feeling her heart race again. She grasped Jake's reins, trying to steady him as he fidgeted. Easy, big guy. But Jake's instincts kicked in, and he reared, muscles tense with primal energy. Sarah struggled to manage him, and in that chaotic moment, she felt the ground tremble beneath her. With a sudden, almost inexplicable fright, Jake bolted, racing toward the edge of the meadow and beyond Sarah. Tom shouted, panic lacing his voice as he leaped onto his mare to follow. The world around her morphed into a blur, echoing with the thundering of hoofbeats. Jake. Stop, she cried, grasping the reins tighter, her heart hammering against her ribs. The landscape raced by, but Sarah's resolve surged. The bond with Jake had always been strong, she would not lose him now. Calm down, boy. Slow down. Her voice pierced through the chaos, and miraculously, Jake slowed, glancing back as though finally recognizing her. His powerful stride shifted to a trot, and Sarah felt a rush of relief as Tom caught up, his eyes wide with concern. She heard him call out, "You okay?" "Yes," she managed, reclaiming her composure as they came to a stop. The meadow stretched out before them, and they both breathed heavily, the remnants of adrenaline lingering in the air in that chaotic moment. They both understood the fragility of connection, whether it was between Sarah and Jake, or between Sarah and Tom. There were always surprises, always challenges, but together they would navigate through it all. "Let's just take a moment," Sarah said after regaining her breath. She looked toward Jake, who was now calm, and the puppy, who had found its way back to her. It was a delicate balance, but maybe, just maybe, they could find their way through it together. As they sat together on the edge of the meadow, the vibrant flowers fluttering as if celebrating their resilience, Sarah felt the ache in her heart flutter like wings. This was just the beginning, and despite the rough patches, she knew the journey ahead would be worth every struggle. Together, with Jake and Tom, they would forge onward into the unknown. Shadows of doubt. The following days felt like a whirlwind of emotions. Each sunrise cast a golden glow on Sarah's life, illuminating her moments with Jake and Tom, yet casting long shadows of uncertainty. Despite the exhilarating ride that day in the meadow, a lingering doubt gnawed at her heart. What would happen when Tom had to leave again? Would their connection hold, or would it fray under the pressure of distance? In the mornings, she found solace in the barn with Jake, their routines grounding her. Yet the evenings remained fraught with tension. Tom was trying to reconnect, but every gentle conversation felt like a fragile glass ornament teetering on the edge of a shelf. Energy crackled in the air, as if they were both holding their breaths, waiting for anything to shatter the silence. One quiet evening, they sat on the porch, the sun casting its last rays onto the horizon. A slight breeze rustled the trees, and Sarah could hear the distant sounds of crickets beginning their evening chorus. The air was thick with unsaid words, and Sarah felt the weight of everything that remained unspoken. Tom finally broke the silence, his tone both cautious and sincere. "You've been really close with Jake, more than I expected. How are you handling it?" His eyes searched hers, searching for clarity. She felt a lump rise in her throat. Could she articulate what this bond meant without deconstructing their relationship? It's complicated. He understands me in a way that sometimes I feel I can't explain to you. It's not about being closer to him than you, it's about surviving your absence, she admitted, her heart pounding as she spoke. Tom nodded slowly. "I get that. It's just, I don't want to feel like a stranger in your life, or in his," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What if I can't connect with him the way you do?" A wave of anxiety crashed over her, piercing the fragile bubble of hope she had been trying to maintain. "You will," she replied assertively, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "It just takes patience. He needs time to understand you, just as I had to." A moment of silence fell between them, thick with unexpressed fears. "What if I can't measure up?" Tom pressed, his vulnerability evident. "What if Jake becomes the only connection you feel you need?" The question hung heavy in the air. Sarah's heart raced. Was that what was happening? As Tom's words settled in her mind, she felt a pull of dread unfurling in her chest. "It won't be like that," she assured him, reaching for his hand, trying to bridge the emotional chasm that seemed to widen. "But you have to trust that both of you can coexist in my life." Tom leaned back, the tension in his shoulders visible. "I want to understand, but it's hard. It feels like I'm competing for your affection." "No. It's not like that." Sarah insisted, her voice rising in passion. You don't have to compete, Tom. It's not about that. I love you both in different ways. He fell silent, and Sarah felt a surge of frustration. Love shouldn't feel like a balancing act on a high wire, shouldn't come at the risk of falling into uncertainty. Let's take a ride tomorrow. Together, she suggested, trying to steer the conversation back to something positive. You'll see the connection we have, you'll feel it. I'll give it a shot, he replied, although doubt still shadowed his eyes. The next morning arrived with a hesitant sun, a vast expanse of blue overhead. Sarah felt invigorated as they prepared to ride. She brushed Jake vigorously, banishing the lingering doubts of the previous night. Tom assisted her, the quiet hum of collaboration lending a sense of calm, but as they rode out, a sense of apprehension tugged at Sarah. Tom was quiet, as if the weight of that night still troubled him. They set off toward the outskirts of the woods, the familiar path winding ahead, and Sarah hoped that the stunning views ahead would lift his spirits. Look at all the wildflowers. They're stunning today, she pointed out as they moved deeper into the forest. Yet as they traveled, Tom remained uncharacteristically distant, staring off into the distance as if searching for something just out of reach. Tom? She called gently, sensing his turmoil. I just hope I don't disappoint you, he replied, his voice low. You mean so much to me. His gaze shifted to her, vulnerability etching his features. You could never disappoint me, she responded. Warmth spilling from her. All I ask is for you to try. The moment hung there, charged yet fragile. They pressed on, passing beneath a canopy of trees that flickered with sunlight, yet the air felt thick, heavy with unsaid fears. After a ride that seemed to stretch into eternity, they reached a secluded glade, a secret kingdom of nature that Sarah had recently discovered. As they dismounted, Sarah felt a surge of optimism. This place is magical, I thought it would inspire us, she said enthusiastically, allowing the tranquility of the surroundings to embrace her, but as Tom stepped away, she sensed something shift. He wandered a short distance from her, gazing at the edge of the forest as if lost in thought. Sarah's heart raced. What if he withdrew? What if this serene moment turned into another reminder of their insecurities? Tom, wait, she called out, urgency filling her voice. Stay with me. He hesitated, finally turning back, but something flickered in his eyes, an internal struggle. I'm just trying to absorb everything. This is overwhelming, he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck, his posture defensive. A pang of fear gripped her heart. What's overwhelming? He sighed deeply. I want to understand, but I feel like I'm in over my head. What if I can't bond with Jake like you do? What if I can never find my place in your heart? Tom, she exclaimed, her voice full of passion and intensity. You're not meant to duplicate what Jake and I have. You bring something unique when you're here with me. You have to believe that. But just as she spoke, a sudden crash echoed from the nearby trees, interrupting their conversation. Both jumped, adrenaline spiking as anxiety flooded her senses. What was that? She whispered, the thrill of the unexpected sending chills down her spine, and Tom paled, eyes darting toward the source of the noise. I don't know, but we should be careful. They cautiously approached the edge of the clearing as a rustling intensified. The underbrush parted, and out stumbled a deer, panicked and wide-eyed. Look. Sarah pointed, momentarily thrilled by the sight. But in the excitement, she didn't notice that Jake had started to shift restlessly. Suddenly, the deer locked onto them, its eyes wild. With a frightened leap, it bounded back into the woods, startling Jake. He began to rear slightly, his powerful legs kicking out with unmistakable strength. Sarah! Tom shouted as he reached out, desperately trying to steady Jake. But in the chaos, Jake pulled away, getting spooked by the sudden movement. Jake, calm down. Sarah urged, trying to regain control. But the bond she had with him felt strained, her heart racing as panic surged inside her. In an instant, Tom was thrown backward, losing his footing. With a gasp, Sarah lunged forward, grasping Jake's reins. As Tom landed hard on the ground. Tom, she cried out, panic enveloping her, are you okay? she asked frantically, scanning his face for signs of injury. I'm fine, he grunted, shaking off the surprise and getting back on his feet. But the moment of chaos had shifted their fragile equilibrium. The fleeting sense of enchantment transformed into a melee of confusion, and Sarah desperately sought to gather her bearings. Jake was still restless, sensing the tension in the air. Easy, boy, she murmured, whispering soothing words as she patted his neck, struggling to calm him. Maybe we should go back, Tom said, his voice strained. This was a bad idea. No. Sarah exclaimed, determination surging through her. We can't let this define our ride. Let's try again. We have to find a way to work together. Tom hesitated, his expression troubled. I don't want something else to go wrong. But Sarah could sense that energy shifting. They needed to confront uncertainty together, to find strength in vulnerability. We're stronger together, she said firmly, locking eyes with him, with a reluctant nod. Tom began to relax. They took a few steady breaths together, grounding themselves. The connection between them had always been powerful, and Sarah could feel an ember reigniting as they continued into the glade once more. She felt the heat of determination surge within her. They would navigate the shadows of doubt, forging ahead no matter the obstacles. And as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Sarah found herself yearning for more exploration, more understanding. The initial feelings of joy became a tide that swept her into the adventure that lay ahead. Together, she and Tom would unearth the hidden depths of their relationship, learning to navigate the intertwining paths of love and connection, and embracing whatever uncertainty came. Each challenge would shape them, mold them, and ultimately strengthen them, creating a bond as unbreakable as steel, fueled by the extraordinary bond she shared with her beloved horse. The homecoming the following days felt like an unsteady descent. A constant push and pull between joy and anxiety. Sarah tried to cultivate a sense of normalcy after that eventful ride, but the air remained thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Tom continued to return home from work with a contemplative expression, and she felt the distance between them growing, even if just a little. Each morning, the sun would rise, spilling warmth across the dewy grass, and she would ride with Jake, her reliable companion. He seemed to sense her internal struggles, often leaning against her as if to say, "You're not alone." But that connection reinforced her doubts about Tom. She often worried he felt like an outsider trying to bridge a vast chasm. One afternoon, she found herself in the barn, the shafts of sunlight filtering through the slats as she groomed Jake. A sense of calm washed over her in the mundane routine, offering solace from her swirling worries. Yet, just as she felt at peace, her phone chimed loudly, shattering the tranquility. "Sarah, you've got to come home. It's important," her mother's frantic voice echoed through the receiver. "What's wrong?" Panic seeped into her thoughts. "Your father has taken a turn for the worse. The doctor recommends we come to the hospital." Her heart dropped. Life had a way of throwing unexpected trials at her, and this felt colossal. "I'll be right there." In a daze, she rushed to gather her things, emotional overload coursing through her veins. Her heart raced as she mounted Jake and set off toward her parents' house. As they rode, the scenery blurred around her. Everything was a haze of colors and sounds, and her thoughts spiraled with anxiety and fear. Once she arrived, the familiar house loomed before her, cloaked in an atmosphere of worry that felt as tangible as the setting sun. She dismounted quickly, leaving Jake tied outside, and rushed inside. Her mother met her at the door, face pale and drawn. "He's in the hospital." "It's not good, Sarah. You need to be strong." Struggling to find her voice, Sarah felt the weight of impending heartbreak settle on her shoulders. What happened? Her mother led her to the living room, where unspoken sorrow hung in the air like a mist. Sarah's father had been battling illness for months, a struggle that had been pushed aside as she navigated her own life. Now, the reality crashed down around her. As hours passed in the waiting room, Sarah held onto her mother's hand, time stretching simultaneously heavy and fleeting. The stark fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, adding to the sterile atmosphere that felt almost suffocating. Why now, she thought, her emotions battling together. She wanted to be strong, but tears began to slip through her defenses, her heart hollowing out with fear. As she stepped into her father's hospital room, the sight took her breath away. Tubes and machines surrounded him, beeping softly yet rhythmically, a chilling reminder of how precarious life could be. Her father's eyes opened briefly, a flicker of recognition crossing his face before exhaustion overtook him again. "Sarah," he whispered, voice faint. Her heart fractured, soft sobs escaping her lips, the reality of his condition washing over her in waves. "Dad, I'm here," she managed to say, pressing his hand tightly. She wished she could transfer her strength to him, to reassure him that everything would be okay. "You're going to be okay," she repeated, though the words felt fragile and uncertain. Hours turned into days as time dragged on in the hospital, a cycle of hope mingling with despair. Sarah spent her days by her father's side, trying to ground herself in moments of clarity, but her mind often drifted back to the life that lay unspoiled at home. Tom, Jake, and the tension that still loomed over them. Meanwhile, thoughts about Tom stirred restlessly. He must be worried, she thought, guilt creeping in like an unwelcome shadow. Should I have told him? But in truth, how could she explain? She desperately wanted to connect, to share her fears, yet vulnerability felt like a double-edged sword. After what felt like an eternity, she finally decided to reach out to Tom. She sent him a simple text: "Dad is in the hospital. It's not good. I need you." Minutes felt like hours, but finally, her phone pinged. "I'm on my way. Hold on, Sarah." When Tom arrived, his face reflected concern mixed with relief. He enveloped her in a warm embrace, offering a connection that felt grounding amid the swirling chaos. "I'm here," he whispered, his presence a balm to her anxious heart. They settled into the waiting room together, sharing a rare quiet moment. Sarah felt the rush of stress ebb just slightly. "I didn't know if you'd come," she finally admitted, emotion spilling forth in a small, broken voice. "Of course I would. You're my world, Sarah," he replied earnestly, his hand clasping hers firmly. "Whatever you need, I'll be here." His support felt like a lifeline, but uncertainty still clung to her thoughts. "I just wish I could take away this pain," she murmured, her eyes reflecting uncertainty. As they waited, Tom tried to soothe her with small talk about the farm and Jake, offering cracks of lightness in the darkening reality. Yet just as she began to settle into that comfort, a sudden commotion caught her attention. A group of doctors rushed past them, their expressions grave. An icy knot pulsed within Sarah's gut, instincts screaming that something was wrong. Before she could react, a nurse appeared at the waiting room door, her gaze locking hard onto Sarah. "Could you please come with me?" Tom's grip tightened around her hand, the warmth suddenly feeling like a pressure as her heart raced. She glanced at him, fear filling her eyes. "What is it?" The nurse hesitated before replying. "We need to discuss your father's condition." Sarah felt the world tilt on its axis. A deep breath, one that felt heavy with unspoken dread, formed before she nodded, fear taking root deep inside. They stepped down the sterile hallway, the fluorescent lights above buzzed, emphasizing the pounding of her heart. Walking into that small consultation room felt like entering a dark tunnel, a place where reality would unfurl. When they settled into the chairs, the nurse remained standing, her expression unreadable. "Your father's condition has worsened. We believe he may require immediate intervention, but there are risks involved," she said, her tone gentle yet firm. "Risks?" Sarah echoed, voice trembling. The word echoed ominously within her. She felt the ice-clad fingers of fear clutching at her heart. "Yes," the nurse continued, her eyes filled with compassion. "His heart is weaker than we anticipated, and surgery could be life-threatening. We need you and your family to make a decision soon." It felt like the room was closing in around her. "What do you mean?" Sarah pressed, her own voice feeling foreign. The nurse's expression softened. "You must understand that any decision made now carries great weight. We will do everything we can. But we need to act quickly." Sarah felt like she was spiraling, each word constricting her chest. I can't lose him," she gasped, turning to Tom, who had also grown pale, his face etched with concern. "Stay strong, Sarah," he said quietly, squeezing her hand tightly. "Whatever decision we make, we'll do it together." But the surge of emotions felt insurmountable. It wasn't just about her father. It was about the hard choices that lay ahead, the ramifications of every decision they faced. With trembling hands, she reached out for her phone, realizing she had to call her family to discuss this life-altering decision. It was surreal to think about the burden of choice, yet she held onto Tom's hand, drawing strength from their connection. The hours passed like a blur as they called family members and navigated choices that felt as murky as stormy waters. Shock and despair rippled through those who gathered, and Sarah's heart cracked further beneath the weight of their collective emotions. At last, she felt a wave of strength rising in her chest. As they stood around her father's bedside later that evening, Sarah held his hand tightly, grounding herself in that precious connection. "Dad, we're here. We're going to face this together," she whispered, determination igniting a fire within her. She turned to Tom, who remained steadfast, his gaze locked onto hers as though he knew the strength she needed. In that tender moment, she couldn't help but feel empowered. Even amidst uncertainty as they faced the battle ahead, it felt as though the shadows of doubt lingered on the edges of the room, but they wouldn't dictate her fate. Together, they would forge ahead into the unknown, with the love of family and the unbreakable bonds they had nurtured along the way. Whatever came next, Sarah vowed to herself she wouldn't face it alone. And as the night deepened, the vibrant stars beyond the hospital windows twinkled with the promise of hope, casting a light that blazed against the impending shadows. Little did she know, trials awaited that would challenge not just her resilience, but the very fabric of her relationships with Tom and Jake as they navigated the storms of life together. The journey was far from over, it was only just beginning.